Hi, my name is Shelby Winslow, and I'm a teacher here at the Claremont Presbyterian Church. I teach Sunday school, so this is for kids. Today the story is about God. God has a plan. And this is about a plan that God set in place many, many years ago. It starts with the story of a baby being born, and we'll talk about 3 babies being born during the course of this story. But the first baby to be born was a baby named Isaac. Now Isaac was born to Abraham and Sarah. And you'll see a picture of that, because I don't have one of that. So he was born to Abraham and Sarah. And they were very old. They were old enough to be grandparents, maybe even old enough to be great-grandparents. So they wanted a baby, but they had never been able to have a baby. And God said, "You're going to have a baby." And Sarah, who was the mother of the baby, laughed because she couldn't believe that that could possibly be true. And the story goes that the name Isaac means laughter. Now Isaac was an ancestor of another baby we're going to talk about. In fact, both babies we're going to talk about. The next baby that we're going to talk about is the baby John. And Isaac was an ancestor of John. Do you know what it means to be an ancestor? An ancestor is someone who comes before us in our family. Now, if you look in the first verse of Matthew, you find what we call the begots. And if you guys remember from before, we open the Bible in half, we take the last half, and we divide that in half again. And we should open to the Gospels. There's Matthew. I had a marker in there too, so that was probably cheating. But this is the story of the begats. And most people don't read them because they're kind of boring. But I'm going to share a little bit of them with you today. This is the book of the verse of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And remember, we talked about that Abraham was Isaac's father. So it goes on to tell us that Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac, and we'll say was the father of instead of begot, Jacob. And Jacob begot Judah and his brothers. And if you go way down here to the end, it will tell you, and Jacob, another man named Jacob, was the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who is called the Christ. So this was God's plan. The next baby that was born was John. And John was a little bit older than Jesus, not a whole lot, just a few months. And God's plan was that John would prepare the way for Jesus. He would tell people about God. He was born to 2 parents that were old as well. His father was Zacharias, and Zacharias was a priest in the temple. And his mother was Elizabeth. She was a cousin of Mary's, Jesus' mother. So Zacharias was busy working away in the temple. He was burning some incense and doing some of the things that he needed to do in the temple. And all of a sudden, standing before him, was the angel Gabriel. Well, he was pretty afraid when he saw that angel standing there, as most of us would be. But he was also very doubtful when the angel told him that his son was going to be born, because he too was too old to have a baby. And so the angel said to him, "Because you doubted God, you will not be able to speak until your son is named John." And he couldn't talk after that. So the time went by, and the baby was born. And in this country, these people didn't name their babies until the 8th day. Very different than what we do now. Most people know what they're going to name their baby before they even are planning to have a baby. But in this country, it was the 8th day before they actually named the baby. And all the friends and relatives came for this procedure. And they asked Elizabeth what the baby's name would be. She said, "His name is going to be John." And they looked at her and they said, "Why is that?" because in that country, it was normal to name your baby after the father. So they expected that baby to be named Zacharias. And they thought maybe they should check with the dad, Zacharias, to see what his feelings were. So they went to talk to him. And Zacharias couldn't speak, of course, so he wrote on a tablet, "His name is John." And immediately, when he showed that to the people, he was then again able to speak. Now, we all know that another baby was born shortly after that. Maybe not all of us, but most of us know the story of the baby Jesus being born. The baby Jesus, over here, was born in the city of Bethlehem. His parents were Mary and Joseph, and they weren't old enough to be grandparents. They were young parents. But the interesting thing about this story is that there was no place for this baby to be born. His parents had to travel from the city where they lived to the city of Bethlehem because they were being counted so that the government could make them pay taxes or money. And so they traveled when Mary was ready to have her baby. It's going to be in the world soon. They got to the city of Bethlehem, and there was no place for them to stay. There was no place in the inn. An inn is like a motel or a hotel in today's world. But the innkeeper had compassion, and he cared about them. And he said, there's a barn out back. So if you want to go in there, it's warm, and it's fairly clean, and it might be a comfortable place for you to spend the night. So they went into the barn or stable, and that's where the baby Jesus was born. Now, I was talking to a friend on the telephone this morning, and I believe that sometimes God gives us things to share with people. And I think this is something that I want to share with you. My friend talked about her sons. They're young men now, and they're twins. They had gone to visit a relative in Georgia. And on the way home, their car broke down. The farthest that they could get was to a very small town, and it was Christmas Eve. They were sitting in their car, waiting for their older brother to be able to come and get them. And Georgia's a long ways away, so that was going to take several hours. And it was cold. And they started to look on their cell phones. I'm not good with cell phones, I'll be honest. Their smartphone. And they found that a church was going to be having a Christmas Eve service. So they signed up to go, because in COVID times, you have to make a reservation, right? So they made a reservation, they went to the church, and they sat down in the church. As early as they could, they went. And they sat there and they listened to the Mass at the church. It was a Catholic church. And when they got done, people from the church came over and said, "Why are you here? We know you don't belong in this town. What happened?" So they told their story to the people at the church. Now, this was a small town. So once again, there was no place for them to go. There were no motels or hotels. And the people of the church said, "Let us talk with the priest or the pastor, and we'll see what we can do." And the priest said, "You can stay at my house." So the boys went over to his house, and they had a Christmas party with Christmas cookies and good food to eat. And later that night, then the older brother was able to come and get them and bring them home. So this is a story about Christmas Eve. It played out again another time. Baby Jesus had nowhere to be born. These boys had nowhere to stay. And somebody had compassion and love and gave them a place. So the next part of the story is about John the Baptist, this gentleman right here, growing up. Now, he was a man that was sent into the world to prepare everyone for Jesus' coming. And what he did to make that happen was to baptize people, which meant that he took them to the River Jordan and he washed them with water there. Now, we can relate to this pretty well in today's world, because we're always told we have to wash our hands all the time because of COVID. And that washes off the bad stuff, right? And dirt can be kind of bad stuff too sometimes. It's kind of nice to get it off your body. So water does that for us. So John told people that if they wanted to be part of God's family, they need to be washed, not on the outside, but on the inside of their body. On the inside. That's kind of hard to understand. But what John wanted people to understand was that when we do wrong things, and God calls that sin, we hurt other people, and God doesn't want us to do that. He wants us to treat other people with love and compassion. So we need to be washed free of that sin on the inside. Because it's bad stuff just like dirt and COVID. And so John was trying to teach people that it was very necessary for them to feel bad about what they had done wrong and want to learn what God wanted them to do. And John was the one that was teaching people that, so that when Jesus came to talk to people here on earth, and we call that his ministry, they would be ready to hear what he had to say. So one day, Jesus went to John, and John was baptizing people in the River Jordan as he usually did. And Jesus said to John, "I want you to baptize me." And John said, "I can't do that. You need to baptize me." And Jesus said, "No, it's what needs to happen." And John agreed because he knew he should do what Jesus asked him to do. And so he baptized Jesus. And as you can see here, a bright light came from heaven and the heavens opened up. And God's voice was heard saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And you also can find that in the book of Matthew, the 3rd verse, the 17th chapter. And this was the beginning of Jesus' ministry here on earth. Now, one of the most important things I want you to take away from this today is that God has a plan for you too. He has made you unique, which means you're different from everybody else. You have special gifts and talents that God wants you to use to do his work here on earth. He wants you to show people love and compassion, be kind and generous to people, and try to learn as much as you can about what he wants you to do. Now I have another story to share. My friend that I talked to today is someone that's helped me many times when I've forgotten about God, when I've gotten so upset with life or so just distraught with what's going on around me that I forget to look to God. And this friend always reminds me. And so today when I was talking to her, I said, "You know what? You're my John the Baptist friend. You get me back on the track that I need to be on. Maybe you can be that kind of a friend for somebody too." So thank you very much for listening today. May God bless you all.
We are going to make gifts of prayer. All you're going to need for this is envelopes for as many people as you want to gift a prayer for, a piece of paper to write your prayer on, colors for the envelope, and then a utensil to write your prayer with. I'm going to make a prayer gift for my niece Kyrie. So I'm just going to write her name. And now I'm going to color it. And she just turned 16. And I've yet to give her her birthday present, so I'm gonna give this with her birthday present. Pretty fitting. Alrighty, I got hers all colored. And now we're gonna write the prayer out. Once the prayer is all written down, next is just fold it in half, place it in the envelope, seal it up, and go and deliver it to whomever you wrote it to. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good day.